Okay, let's dive right into this. It's August 13th, 2026, and wow, we've got a lot to cover. We're looking at a global landscape today where high stakes geopolitical maneuvers, urgent climate shifts, and some really vital economic data are literally all colliding at once. And this isn't just distant news. These intersecting events are actively shaping global trade, the stability of your local economy, and honestly, our shared environmental future. So let's break the whole thing down. To help us see the bigger picture without getting lost in all the noise, we've organized today's briefing into four clear areas: global conflict and security, health, climate and disasters, global elections and diplomacy, and finally, U.S. domestic and economy updates. Section 1. Global conflict and security. We're starting right off with the absolute highest stakes geopolitical flashpoints impacting global stability today. Right now in Eastern Europe, we're witnessing a very deliberate tit-for-tat escalation. On one side, Ukrainian drone and missile strikes have been targeting critical Russian logistics and grain export infrastructure right along the Black Sea. This is a direct move to choke off key revenue streams and totally disrupt their supply chains. Now, in immediate response, Russia launched retaliatory strikes aimed specifically at civilian power grids. This caused severe, widespread power outages across Sevastopol, which is, of course, designed to demoralize and disrupt daily life. Basically, everyday infrastructure has officially become the primary frontline in this conflict. Now, what's really interesting about this is how this regional conflict is rapidly spilling over into global economic tension. Russian President Vladimir Putin just issued a very stern, direct warning to European nations. He stated that Moscow will retaliate in kind if Europe continues to seize Russian-flagged commercial tankers. He's specifically talking about vessels operating as part of a shadow fleet, this covert network of ships used to quietly bypass international sanctions and keep those oil revenues flowing. So this absolutely sets the stage for a massive standoff over global maritime commerce. And this aggressive posture, well, it isn't just limited to Europe. Following some major Pacific Fleet exercises, President Putin traveled over to Ichurup Island in the Kuril chain. He actually used this highly contested geographic backdrop to issue another firm warning. This time, he's cautioning NATO against expanding its footprint into the Asia-Pacific region. It's a crystal clear signal that Moscow views NATO's Pacific alliances as a direct trigger point, and they're actively posturing to defend their eastern flanks. Shifting our focus over to the Middle East, we are seeing a region under immense multi-front pressure right now. First, the Israeli military has significantly intensified operations with targeted strikes in southern Lebanon, while simultaneously deploying additional troops to the occupied West Bank to control these escalating civilian and settler blockades. Compounding all of this regional anxiety, Iran's supreme leader just appointed Revolutionary Guards General Ali Abdullahi to lead the armed forces. And concurrently, Tehran completely rejected any claims that the Strait of Hormuz has been reopened to unrestricted traffic. They're keeping a tight strategic grip on one of the world's most vital oil choke points, which is definitely keeping global energy markets on edge. Okay, the volatility of this international security environment even extends all the way to executive protection, as we saw today with a high-stakes maneuver in Ankara. Facing unspecified threats, authorities protecting President Donald Trump executed a really tense, multi-layered security operation. First, they actually deployed a decoy Air Force One carrying senior U.S. officials just to draw attention. Then, while all eyes were on the decoy, the president was quietly and safely transferred onto a smaller, much less conspicuous military aircraft. It's just a stark reminder of the intense real-world complexities involved in keeping world leaders secure right now. Moving on to Section 2, Health, Climate, and Disasters. We're shifting from man-made conflicts to the urgent environmental and humanitarian crises that are demanding immediate global action. We begin this section with a truly devastating reality out of Western Colombia. Emergency operations following a severe earthquake there have now transitioned into the grim final recovery phase. National officials have sadly confirmed 265 fatalities, but the scale of the tragedy goes so much further than just that number. Over 3,400 people are injured, and thousands more have been completely displaced, literally having their homes and livelihoods leveled in an instant. Over on the global health front, the World Health Organization has issued a dire bulletin regarding the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The rapidly expanding Ebola outbreak there is currently on track to become the deadliest on record. So the crucial point is that the WHO is demanding an immediate scale-up of vaccines and health interventions on the ground. In our hyper-connected world, a regional outbreak of this magnitude is never just a local problem. It's a critical global vulnerability that absolutely requires immediate containment. Meanwhile, new climatology data is forcing Europe to confront a pretty harsh environmental reality. The continent is currently warming twice as fast as the global average. Twice as fast. This isn't just an ecological warning, it's a massive structural threat. EU governments are now grappling with severe public health strains from persistent heat waves alongside mounting economic risks. We're talking about failing agricultural yields, disrupted supply chains, and power grids being pushed to the absolute brink of failure. Section 3. Global Elections and Diplomacy. Let's see how voters and diplomats are actually responding to all this worldwide volatility. We're seeing some really fascinating democratic exercises and strategic alliances taking shape today. In a massive testament to voter turnout, over 8.7 million registered voters in Zambia just went to the polls to elect their president and National Assembly. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, Prime Minister Mark Brown secured an impressive fifth consecutive election victory for the Cook Islands Party. But perhaps the most strategic pivot in the Pacific involves Washington and Tokyo. The US and Japan have initiated talks on a joint deep-sea rare earth mining project. Why does this matter? Well, because rare earth minerals are literally the backbone of modern technology. They power everything from your smartphone to electric vehicles and advanced defense systems. This project is a highly calculated move to diversify global supply chains and aggressively reduce reliance on China. And finally, Section 4, U.S. Domestic and Economy. We're bringing our focus back home to see exactly how these global currents are impacting American politics and wallets. First up, in domestic politics, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt announced she'll be stepping down at the end of August. She's leaving the briefing room to spend more time with her family, but she will be transitioning into a role as a senior outside advisor to President Trump. Administrative shakeups like this are always critical to watch, right? Because they often signal shifting communication strategies and realignments as an administration gears up for upcoming legislative or electoral pushes. Now, let's talk about the economy, specifically a metric that directly impacts your wallet. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics released its July data, showing the Consumer Price Index ticking down slightly to a 3.4% year-over-year increase. This slight cooling in the annual inflation rate is a vital signal. For economists, it shows stabilizing domestic price pressures. But for us, for everyday consumers, it represents a potential easing on costs, meaning we could actually start to see some relief on things like grocery bills, auto loans, and eventually mortgage rates. Finally, we have a pretty staggering legal development out of the Department of Justice today. Federal prosecutors in New York have charged 11 individuals in connection with a highly lucrative, decade-long foreign marriage fraud scheme. The sheer audacity of this operation is incredible. The operators were allegedly charging up to $100,000 per case to arrange illegal marriages, all specifically designed to bypass the system and secure U.S. green cards for foreign nationals. We've covered a whole lot of ground today, from shifting battle lines and high-stakes diplomacy all the way to economic stabilization at home. So I want to leave you with this question to chew on. How will these intertwined shifts in global security, economic stabilization, and environmental crises redefine the final months of 2026? Because as you've seen, everything is connected, and understanding these threads is absolutely key to grasping what comes next. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning and keep learning.